Do you think he's willing to use this nuclear power plant as a weapon?
Well, we know Putin for what he is, which is a tyrant who won't stop at attacking whatever possible target he views as convenient for what the Russians are doing in Ukraine. And so he's threatened the use of nuclear weapons. He's threatened the use of, the effort to go after a nuclear plant if necessary. Mm-hmm. So he clearly has threatened to take those steps. Now, I think he's also got to know that if he does do something that results in a radiation impact that could spread to other countries, he's asking for serious trouble.
Is it an Article 5 violation?
Yeah, I think Jane was right to at least raise the specter that if other countries are impacted by this, there clearly is at least an issue involving Article 5 as to whether or not there has been an attack on those countries. So I think Putin has to really think long and hard about whether he really wants to get into that much trouble with NATO and the United States.
Well, sir, obviously, around the question of Article 5, we have heard in the not-so-distant past from former president and presidential candidate Donald Trump on the idea that any NATO countries that weren't paying enough may not get U.S. protection if the day should come. And Donald Trump is meeting and doing a joint press conference with the Speaker of the House tomorrow at Mar-a-Lago. The Speaker has the power to decide the fate of Ukraine in the U.S. Congress. How worried are you about the nature of that relationship, knowing that Congress may very well never pass aid for Ukraine?
Well, I'm very worried about it because I think the Congress and particularly the Republican House has really been very irresponsible in dealing with this issue. I think there's no mistake here that that our national security is involved here. It's not just about protecting democracy in Ukraine. It's about protecting democracy in the 21st century. And we've made very clear that Ukraine must win and that Putin must fail in his effort to try to undermine that democracy. The United States has taken a clear position with our NATO allies. And I think if Congress, if the House should fail to provide the necessary aid that is required here for Ukraine, they are basically playing Putin's game and playing into his hand. And that really does damage our credibility in terms of our national security. If the United States cannot act as it should on a bipartisan basis in providing the necessary aid that Ukraine requires.
Secretary Panetta, there are great concerns that Iran may be about to strike in a retaliatory strike against Israel following Israel's strike in Damascus recently. The U.S. says that it will support Israel no matter what happens. And White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre today was asked about the threat from Iran and how the U.S. might respond to an attack against Israel. Here's what she said. We'll have you respond.
I don't want to get into hypotheticals here. What we have made very clear, obviously we've seen the threats coming from Iran, and so we have made ourselves very clear where we stand in supporting Israel's security. That is ironclad. That does not change. I'm just not going to get into details about our operational procedures from here.
Mr. Secretary, with your background running both the Pentagon and the CIA, for that matter, I wonder what you're hearing about this, how concerned we should be. What's about to happen?
Well, I'd be very concerned. There's a couple things that are happening that are of deep concern. One is that the latest reports are that Iran has developed enough enriched nuclear fuel that it could very, very soon possess a nuclear weapon. That's unacceptable. And the United States has to make clear that that's unacceptable. And if Iran should attack in any way, directly attack Israel, I think the United States has a responsibility to come to Israel's defense in that kind of situation. So Iran ought to understand that if it does make the decision to deliberately attack Israel, that it is asking for the kind of trouble and response that could very well undermine their own regime. If they want to put their regime on the line, this is what they're asking.
Well, Mr. Secretary, we just here this evening have discussed a hot war in the Middle East, a hot war on the continent of Europe. There is a trilateral meeting happening at the White House talking about threats emanating from China. Certainly, the world does feel very dangerous right now, and yet there is a live debate on Capitol Hill at the moment as to whether or not we should reauthorize warrantless surveillance, Section 702 specifically, of FISA. Lawmakers are going to try again tomorrow on a shorter 2-year extension after an effort to advance a 5-year extension yesterday failed. What would you tell those on Capitol Hill weighing this measure as we speak they should know about FISA and why it may be important as we face so many different conflicts?
Look, I would tell them that they are elected by the American people in principle to not just govern, but to defend our security. And if they fail to pass and reauthorize the FISA law, what they're doing is undermining our security, because that's the one vehicle we have to be able to go after terrorists who have no other intention but to attack the United States of America. Terrorists have made that clear. We know that from 9/11, what they're after. And our ability to gather intelligence from terrorists who are operating abroad is absolutely essential to our ability to provide security. I don't think we have to choose between protecting security and protecting our freedoms in this country. We have in this law protections to make sure that we are protecting the innocent in the process of gathering this kind of intelligence. And there are reforms in this law that enhance that ability. So this is not a choice between security or our freedoms. This is going to be a vote that determines whether or not we protect ourselves from the possibility of another terrorist attack. I hope those who are thinking about this vote understand that if they fail to provide this authorization, they are in large measure to blame for any terrorist attack that subsequently takes place.